Okay, everyone, as you can see, we finally got the engine on the dyno and we're getting ready to dyno this thing. But we do a few checks before we would try to start it, and I'm going to go over the few things with you that we check. And one of the things that we checked, it already failed. And I'm going to explain to you what that is in a minute. But what we do is, we put it on the dyno and we hook up everything. We check for leaks and things like that. But with the carburetor, one of the very first things I do is, before I even start it, is I will put fuel in the system after we check for leaks, and then I will run in the idle screws, and they're usually always, off. They're like 2, 3 out, 4, just crazy numbers. No one's adjusting them. So in saying that, I run these in and then back them out 1.5 turns. That's a good starting point. Then another one of my checks is, because I've had a problem with this before, is I just hit the throttle and make sure my squirters are working, okay? I had one carburetor in a while back that I had a problem with, and it ended up being the gasket. The hole, one of the holes for the accelerator pump wasn't a hole there, wasn't stamped out when they made it, so it was blocking the accelerator pump. So in saying that, we did our check here, and then we ran into that same problem again. And I'm like, oh man, the gasket doesn't have a hole. Same exact problem. But this time is something different, and I want to show you this on the video. Now, this is a Brawler carburetor, and there's really nothing wrong with these carburetors. They're like a economy version of a quick fuel carburetor, and they work real good. But like any carburetor, you gotta look them over, make sure things are cool, and and it could be quick fuel, it could be Holly, it could be any carburetor. You can have the same problem. But I'm going to show you something here that what is causing this from getting fuel in this squirter. This squirter squirts like this. You can see fuel going down, but this one here wouldn't. And here is the problem. Right there. That should be a hole for when your accelerator pump diaphragm is on there. When this is bolted on, and this mechanism here, when you hit your throttle, pushes up on there, this should squirt fuel into the carburetor through the squirters. But as you can see, that isn't drilled out. Or when this thing was manufactured, that hole wasn't drilled or casted, whatever the case, however they do that. But we're going to have to drill that out. There's no hole there. And that was one of the checks we do, and it failed right from the get-go. So we'll do that. We'll fix that up real quick, and then before we fire it, we'll just make sure everything's tied up, any wires. And here's the wires I was telling you about, spark plug wires that I use on the dyno. These are not going to be the actual wires that will be on the dyno. But after we get it running, the very first thing we'll do is we'll set the timing and we'll set the floats. And that's very important. You got to set your floats right away, because the thing is, if you start tuning your engine and your floats are off, and then you realize your floats need to adjust it, it's going to throw your tuning off. Believe it or not, raising and lowering your floats can affect the air-fuel ratio when you're running your engine, dynoing the engine, things like that. So you want to adjust your floats, and I adjust them about 3/4 way in the sight glass. And I like to do it with the engine running because it's the most accurate. You got to be careful when it's running, because fuel can seep out of this. So you just got to crack it. If you want to lower your float, you just crack this top screw and then turn the hex one down. That will lower it. And then if you want to raise it, you counterclockwise the hex screw on both of them. So get your float bowls going right away. And then the next thing I'll go after is I'll make sure the timing's right, and then we'll check the idle. And then from that point on, we'll check for leaks, oil leak, everything. And when we feel like everything is good, and then we'll make a short pull on the dyno. So what we'll do right now, we'll fix this little scenario we have here with the accelerator pump, and then we'll get it started up on the dyno, and we'll show you that next. So I want to just do a quick follow-up video on this carburetor. I told you the hole was plugged, and which it was. And I'm going to show you what it was. It's so simple, but this kept it from working. So I thought I was going to have to drill it, but I seen it was like a rounded surface. So I just got me a screwdriver and I poked it, and here's what fell out of it. It's this little ball. It's a little ball. That's what was in the hole. And most likely, what that is when they manufacture these parts, I would probably guess that this is probably was in a tumbler and probably have these little balls most likely, and it tumbles these parts and smooths it out, and one got caught in that hole. It's either that or it's just a piece of casting flash when they manufacture this from the aluminum. But anyways, it's a perfectly round ball, and it was perfectly size on size with that hole. I was able to poke it out. So now I'll just put the gasket back on, put it back together, and we'll continue on with the dyno. But I just wanted to show you guys that. We're getting ready to make an adjustment on the carburetor here. We actually started it up already, and we warmed it up, and everything is good. But what we have to do next is now we're going to check our timing. Now we have some heat in the engine. And the first thing I did too, before we started it, and I didn't show you guys, is I adjusted these, and these were off. Basically, I just turned these screws so there's just barely a little play in there. I mean, there's like nothing there. You got to do this one, and you got to do the one on this side too. These are both already adjusted. I did these already. So there's just some hair play on the accelerator pump. Okay. I adjusted the idle mixture screws in, 1.5 out, all of them, they were off. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to go in, we're going to start it up. I'm going to come out here, I'm going to check the timing. I'm going to verify it, I'm going to adjust it if necessary. And then after that, then I'm going to adjust the float levels. After that's done, then we're ready to make a pull on this engine. So we'll go do that right now. Okay, so we just made a pull. Everything ran great. So we're not even concerned about horsepower or torque yet. We just wanted to see our numbers, our air-fuel ratio. We want to make sure our oil pressure is good, which it is. And I just want to show you guys something here. Okay, so the rings are just seating in, and so we don't really want to make any jet changes or anything like that just yet, because I know that the rings are still seating. Because we can make another 1 or 2 pulls, and these air-fuel ratio numbers will start changing based on the ring seating. So what we're seeing right now is it's fat. It's too rich right now, the engine. With these 11 numbers, 11 and 12 numbers, that's too rich. Now, if you look in the very beginning at 3,000 RPM, you see the 13 there, okay? Now, what that's telling me is that it's lean down low, and then as it's going through the RPM range, it's getting fat, okay? It's getting rich. So before I make any more changes, I'll make a few more pulls to get the rings seated in. But what that is telling me is when I tipped into the throttle, it was lean. And what we would do to correct that, we wouldn't make a jet change just yet, But the problem with that is going to be the power valve. What is happening is the power valve is coming in too late, okay? And right now, this engine has a 4.5-inch power valve. And what we would do is we would change it to a 6.5. And the reason is that is because this engine makes, it makes 12, 13, 14, 15 inches of vacuum at idle. And we want to split that in half and match our power valve basically to that. And what that will do is when we tip into the throttle, it's going to reach the 6.5 faster than the 4.5 and therefore open up the power valve, dump in fuel into our main well, and then that's going to clean it up down low. And then from that point on, our main jets will take over. So what we're going to do now, we're going to make another few pulls, breaking the rings, and then I will show you how these numbers change just based on that. And then after that, we'll do a power valve change. So we're going to get ready to make another pull here because we want to seat the rings, but there's something else I want to explain real quick. Is I mentioned that early on in the pull, it was lean. Now, my pull is actually starting at 3,000 RPM, 3,006. But what you're not seeing, or what I'm going to make a pull and I'm going to actually show you early on in the pull, below 3,000, you'll see my air fuel ratio be in the red. Okay, that means when I'm tipping into the throttle, when I start to put a load on it, it's lean. Okay, then by looking at my numbers, as it's going past 3,000, it starts to clean up. But the problem is it starts to go rich. And what that is telling me is two things. One, it has the wrong power valve. Okay, so basically the power valve is coming on too late, and we need it to come on earlier. That's why we're going to change it to a 6.5 from a 4.5. But I'm actually going to make a pull here, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to point to it. I'm going to roll into it, and it's going to be in the red, but then it's going to clean up. And that's going to show you that it's the power valve. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go out there, we're going to change the power valve, and we're going to make a jet change, and then these numbers will come into play, and we want to shoot for 12.8 to 13.0. That's what our goal is through the whole RPM range. And if we do that, we're going to make peak torque and max horsepower. So that's coming up next. Okay, so based on our numbers, when we made that pull, we knew where we were lean early on, and I pointed to where I tipped into the throttle, and you see the air fuel ratio, the bars went red. That tells me that the power valve was too small. Okay, so what we're going to do here with the carburetor is we're going to change the power valve to a larger power valve. We'll allow it to come on earlier, and that's going to allow us to have more fuel earlier. But what that is also going to do is give us more fuel early, which is going to make it rich, which we are already rich throughout the rest of the pull. So what we need to do to correct that is now we do a jet change. So we're going to change the power valve, and we're going to do a jet change right now. So we just took the jets out. I'm pulling these out, and these rear ones are 84s. Okay, so we'll come over here. We've got 84s in the rears. In the fronts, we had 76s. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to start with I'm going to change it to jet sizes. So I'll go 82s in the rears, and then in the fronts are 76s, and we'll go 74s in the front. And then what we're going to do, here's the power valve, and this was in the front metering block. And then here's the jets on the fronts. So what we're going to do, this one has a 4.5. We're going to take that off. We're going to change that to a 6.5. 6.5. Okay. Put it on there. Just get a little snug. Alright. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to take out these. These are 76s. I'm going to set these aside. And in the fronts, I'm going to change it to 74s. Check them, verify. 74s, okay. Now, put them on. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go in the back here. I'm gonna change these to the smaller ones. Like I said, we're gonna put 82s in the back. We won't videotape that. We're gonna go do that, and then we're gonna go back in there and we're gonna make another pull, and I'm gonna show you how these changes affected the air-fuel ratio, and it's gonna start bringing the engine in to run it really, really clean, and we'll see our horsepower and torque increase just based off of this. So that's coming up next. Okay guys, so this is it, man. This is gonna be the final pull of this engine. So we worked on tuning it up, and it took a little bit, but what we ended up doing is just putting a bigger power valve in, and we just kept reducing the jet size of the main jets until we got our air-fuel ratio right. The only thing we did was we played with the timing, and it actually ended up having liking 41 degrees of timing. So going back earlier, what I told you about the bushings, so now it's going to have 20 degrees of timing in initially, but when we start it's got the 10 degrees to start retard, so it's going to start with 10, which is perfectly fine. It will idle at 20, and then at full song will be 41, and it runs really, really good like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start it, and I'm gonna go in there, and I'm gonna go in there and grab the throttle, because I can get better throttle response than doing it here, and just show you how crisp this engine is. I mean, it's like real throttle response and really, really nice. And then we'll come in here, make a pull, and we'll show you what this 467 can do. So let me start it up for you guys and show you. Okay everyone, so that's a wrap on this engine. Good running engine, 467 cubic inches. And these are the numbers. I mean, it made 546 horsepower and 570 foot-pounds of torque. And if you look at our numbers here, this is what we were shooting for. We got 13 O's, we got high 12s, and that's where we want to be. That's where it's going to make max torque and ultimately max horsepower. So, don't get hung up on the numbers. Basically this is just a bored out 454 with a cam and intake, and it's fresh, and it's a muscle car engine. It's going to go in a 74 Camaro, and it's going to run real good. I mean, this thing is going to smoke the tires at will, But going back to what I said earlier, if you guys remember, I wanted to point out this to you guys. Remember the rear main seal deal, what the leaks and that? There's 0 leaks on this engine. I mean, we're going to take a walk in there. I'm going to show you. I mean, no rear main seal leaks, no leaks anywhere. And as I showed you, the throttle response, that has to do with the way we tuned it. And then, every engine's different. This just shows you this has rectangular port heads, and the other engine that I did similar to this was oval port, and the oval port they make more torque down low, which shows on the dyno. But all in all, it's a good little engine. Came in 427. We don't know what it made before, because we never dynoed it. But I guarantee it makes way more power than it did. So let's go take a walk in there and show you, down here, no oil leaks. And now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make the spark plug wires. Now that it's all engine's complete, I'll do that next, and then I'll take a picture of that at the end of the video, and you'll see what it looks like with the new spark plug wires made, and that will be it. So that's it, everyone. I'm glad you guys you guys are chiming in and liking the video, and I hope you guys like the whole deal. So if you got any questions, leave them in the comments. And if you like what we've done here, please like and subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Thank you.